I would say if there's any one thing that pushed Walter Sickert over the edge, it is with the deformity he was born with, which is this fistula, a deformity of his penis, which required 3 surgeries on this little boy that would have been absolutely mutilating. Basically what the fistula is the urethra does not go all the way to the tip of the penis, and it forms another hole for the person to urinate out of, and there's no way to make that urethra longer. And so they'll cut back the penis until they get to the point where the person can urinate. If Walter was a lucky little boy, his ordeal began by his feeling suffocated as his nose and mouth were covered with a chloroform-soaked rag that was guaranteed to make him violently nauseated later. If he was an unlucky little fellow, he was wide awake and experienced every horror happening to him. The nurse may have firmly held his legs in place while Dr. Cooper took a scalpel and cut along the fistula's entire track according to the hospital standard procedure. It could have resulted in the worst of all problems, which would have been a partial or almost complete amputation that would have required, number one, that he urinated like a woman, that he had to squat, and that 2, he could not have sex, and 3, the humiliation of it. So I think he had a tremendous rage about the loss of his manhood.
Most people forget that in homicide cases, most of the time, all we have as police and prosecutors is circumstantial evidence. It's valid in a courtroom. You don't have the luxury, I hate to call it, of surviving victims.
The Ripper thrived on taunting the police with his mocking letters and drawings. So I spent months examining the letters with my team. We focused on handwriting, and Veda Hart, the former Sickert archivist, brought our attention to something significant.
When I first came into the Public Record Office and looked at the Jack the Ripper letters, I was very disconcerted because so many of them seemed to be in different writing styles. And I thought, these can't possibly, there's no way that they could possibly be by one person. Looking at them more closely, I began to notice consistencies. There are consistencies about the mocking tone. There are consistencies in the way that they were sent. There are other things that strike me. Look at that. The way that boss is written on that.
Hugely thick nib or whatever.
That has to be written with a very thick nib. But then the writing below is much thinner. Whoever this was using 2 different writing instruments, and you'll find that through many of the letters, that they're using perhaps a brush, perhaps a thick pen, perhaps a pencil that's been sharpened to a chisel end. Who would do that? It has to be an artist.
Sickert was an artist, but in his younger days he had also been an actor. A telegram signed Jack the Ripper and sent to the police had a provocative link to Sickert's life on the stage. This telegraph made me nuts when I first saw it. What's interesting is that he started out writing something right here. What does it look like to you?
Mr. Nobody?
Exactly, that's what I thought too. And that is tremendously important because Sickert's stage name was Mr. Nemo. When he was an actor, Mr. Nemo, Latin for Mr. Nobody. So he started out writing something right here, crossed it out, and then wrote Jack the Ripper sent these.
The fact that Sickert used the name Nemo doesn't impress me. It's a stage name. He was an actor for 3 years. He also changes his name for Walter to Richard so he can actually sign messages Dick Sick.
He played with different ideas, different identities, different roles, different identities throughout his life. So Mr. Nobody, in a sense, would suggest that his sense of identity was a great problem to him.
Dr. Ferrara returned to Virginia to continue more detailed comparisons between Ripper and Sickert letters, and there he found another clue.
This letter is one of the more recently found Jack the Ripper letters that we were particularly interested in. One of the things we noted was this partial watermark that you see here in the photo. When I was looking at Walter Sickert's correspondence, this particular letter of his, I saw that in fact there was a full watermark, the A. Pearly and Sons. Now, do they overlay each other?
It fits.
I think it's reasonable to assume that a lot of people use that particular stationery. So this is not a smoking gun by any stretch of the imagination, but at least we were able to establish a tenuous link or commonality between at least one of the Jack the Ripper letters, and subsequently some others, and Walter Sickert.
Then I received an unexpected phone call, one of those magic moments in a criminal investigation. A woman in Cornwall, in southern England, had heard I was working on the Ripper case, and she showed me a visitor's book from a guest house popular with artists at the end of the 19th century. The book was full of comments and drawings from the various guests over the years. What I found myself looking at, it literally sent a chill up my spine. I mean, my hair practically stood on end when I saw that Jack the Ripper signature. I mean, it was like an amazing moment. These drawings right here, I was wondering what you would make. These are photographs of pages from a Ripper letter.
Yes.
Called the Pearly King. See how the pipe has been drawn in this character's mouth? And this is from, quote, Jack the Ripper at the Public Records Office.
Yes.
And you look at these characters on this page. Again, I'm not the art person, but if you look, I was just wondering how they would compare to this Ripper letter.
They're very similar. The first thing that struck me was that these drawings were almost certainly by the same hand as the person that made the drawings in the Ripper letters in the Public Record Office.
And these drawings right here, I was wondering what you would make, because this to me, that when I first saw it, I immediately thought that looks to me like a caricature of Whistler.
I completely agree. I mean, it looks exactly like Whistler. We know that Whistler went down to Cornwall in 1883 to fall along with Sickert. So to see his image here is very interesting.
There is a place in here where it looks like Sickert might have written his initials with the date October 1889. It's right in the margin, sort of a cipher or monogram. It's sort of a W with an R on top and an S, and then October 1889. This case has worn me to the bone. I don't know of anything I've ever done that's made me as tired. And I'll honestly tell you, I have not had a life at all. It's been a tremendous financial expense that I would never have chosen. I mean, I've spent about $6 million on this book. It's like raising part of the Titanic. Months had passed since Dr. Ferrara had started the mitochondrial DNA testing. At last, we had the results. Genetic locations in a sequence found in mitochondrial DNA from a Ripper letter were also found in mitochondrial DNA from 2 Sickert letters. The evidence added yet another incriminating layer to the case.
It's not definitive at this point. It's iffy. But it's tantalizingly iffy again in terms of we can't eliminate Walter Sickert.
I thought I understood what it was like to be a police investigator